All right, and we are back with another Monday preview. I'm your host, the Hockey Princess. Just as a reminder, folks, if you are going to a game this season, please wait for the whistle and do not get up while the puck's in play. Also, if you are going to a game this season and you're looking for some food options, highly recommend Su Taqueria El Rey del Taco over on Ogden, just about 2 blocks away from the United Center. Great food. Everyone there is lovely. Um, let's get into it, guys. We've got 3 teams that we're facing this week: Los Angeles Kings, Ottawa Senators, and then the Utah Hockey Club. First off, Los Angeles Kings, they're currently 3rd out of 8th in the Pacific. They're sitting behind the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. Their last 10 are 5-3-2. No back-to-back for them. They played Saturday against St. Louis, away in St. Louis, and then they will play Chicago in Chicago Monday, today when this drops. They have no one on the injured reserve right now. Everybody's healthy. 4 notable forwards for them: Ante Kopitar, Kevin Fiala, Philip Deneau, Byfield, Drew. Defenseman, you've got Doughty, you've got Clark, and then for your goaltending tandem, you've got Rittich and Darcy Kemper. Big thing with Los Angeles, are they good? Yes, they're definitely one of those teams that will consistently make it to the playoffs, but then struggle in the first round, which, to be fair, it's really hard to face Vegas and Edmonton right now, the way that they're set up. So I don't think that they will make any changes come trade deadline. I think they're set in their spot because aside from Vegas and Edmonton, I do think Los Angeles is the best in the Pacific, so I don't see anybody knocking them out. But I do see it being a shorter postseason for Los Angeles. That being said, it is not going to be an easy matchup come Monday. Ottawa, we're going to talk in a second. We've got their line plug coming in just a couple of minutes. Let's jump to the Utah Hockey Club really quick. We did play them last week. So really not a ton of new information because we just played them, hoping for a better outcome than the last time we played them last week. In their last 10, they're 6-4-0. They're currently 6 out of 8 in the Central. They do have a back-to-back this week. Prior to playing us, they played Detroit in Detroit on Thursday, and then they play us in Chicago come Friday. Their injured reserve is Bortuzzo with a lower body day-to-day, Carconi, day-to-day with a lower body, and then TJ Ginla has been out with a hip surgery at the beginning of the season and has just been out for the season. Like I said, really not a ton with them, just because we did play them last week and we went over their stuff last week. And then we're going to hop over to the third line plug, guys, to break down the Ottawa Senators. And we are back with another Monday preview episode. We've got Taylor from the third line plug here to talk about the Ottawa Senators. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So just to get started, for our listeners or viewers that aren't necessarily familiar with the Ottawa Senators, or maybe they just kind of know of the Bash brothers of Brady and Matthew from Four Nations, who would you say are kind of the biggest pieces, the biggest needs to know of the current Ottawa Senators roster?
I mean, the first name that comes off the bat, Brady Tkachuk, like you mentioned, the captain. He was such a breath of fresh air when he came to Ottawa in 2018, just because we had came off what was going on with Eugene Melnyk, and then everybody ended up leaving. So Brady coming in was a real breath of fresh air that we desperately needed on this team. Naturally, Tim Stützle. I mean, that's such an obvious pick right there. I know for LA fans, I know they're probably upset they didn't get him. Ranger fans, okay, in fairness, Lafreniere is kind of panning out for you guys now. But no, definitely Stützle with the Rangers would have been pretty good. And obviously, Thomas Chabot. I know a lot of Senator fans like to whip on him on Twitter, but you know what? He has better games than he has bad games, in my personal opinion. Jake Sanderson, another young defenseman on this end, really good. Naturally, his dad is Jeff Sanderson, former NHLer, and he really has impressed a lot of fans this season. And up front, I was going to say there's a couple of guys. Drake Batherson at 100%. Josh Norris at one time I could say was definitely part of the core, but he's kind of iffy right now with the contract. And naturally, Claude Giroux and Ridley Greig.
Perfect. So currently, as of right now, you guys are sitting in the second wild card spot. Is this surprising to you? What was your kind of expectation going into this season in terms of what their performance was going to be?
Honestly, I think the expectations I have for the Sens are pretty much on par with what I thought. I figured we would be a playoff team, but it's just so refreshing to see them as a playoff team so late into the season after how many years we've had where, we would play X amount of games and then November would hit, we fell apart, the season's over. But I would say that Sens are meeting expectations. Exceeding them would definitely be in the top three of our division, which is a very tough division, which is getting a bit weaker, which is nice for the Sens. But obviously, as a Senators fan, I can't speak for everybody, but I think that expectations are pretty much met at this point.
Nice. And like you said, the past couple of years, they've been strong and kind of tapered off a bit during the season. What would you say is the biggest difference between that and now? Is it
Goaltending.
goal? Okay.
100%. Just goaltending. It's so refreshing to have a Vezina winning goaltender back there after X amount of years where we tried the Matt Murrays, we tried goalies like that, and none of them stuck. So bringing in Linus Olmark was great. The one big surprise for the Sens was Linus Marilainen, sorry. No, Levi Marilainen. Apologize, I know it's a long day. Levi Marilainen, who's been so good for the Sens. And it's funny because he's one of those guys who I feel like Senator fans didn't really know what the ceiling was going to be for him because he really hadn't showed it at the pro level.
Mhm.
And then he comes along and there was talks of him maybe being in the consideration for Rookie of the Year.
Excellent. Currently, there's not a considerable amount, but the Suns have quite a few guys that are on the injured reserve right now. Is that concerning to you guys at all, or is it kind of just everybody's day to day, so you don't expect people to be out long term? Or how confident are you that the guys that are not on injured reserve right now can kind of get the job done?
If I'm being perfectly honest, if guys like the Brady Tkachuk's and the Shane Pintos are gone long term, I don't know how much faith I would have in the core up front just because you look at the roster itself and when healthy, 100% we're a playoff team. Would guys like the Brady Tkachuk's, like the Shane Pintos go down and you realize like we are kind of weak, especially at center. But it is nice to see that the Sens are getting healthy once again. And that's all we could really hope for, I guess, because not only have we had terrible goaltending over the years, but the injury bug has hit us so hard. It's not even funny at this point. Senator fans are just waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Because I know now both Kachuk brothers are kind of on their own injured reserves with being in the Four Nations. What are your thoughts on, the Four Nations? I mean, we all had a lot of fun watching it, but were you a fan of it? Are you frustrated about it now? With guys getting injured from like a mid-season tournament. What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny that you mentioned that because my co-host and I, we recorded an episode last night, which hasn't come out as the time we were recording this. And he and I praised the Four Nations tournament because, again, we talked about this on our episode that will come out, is that he and I very much had the expectations of, okay, don't really know what you're making here. Like, I understand that you want to bring back best on best hockey, but is this really the best way? And then it comes along and it bodies the NBA, it bodies the Pro Bowl. And I said this to my co-host, when ESPN in the United States, as well as people like Rich Eisen who don't talk hockey on their podcast or their TV shows, when they're talking about it and they're praising it, that's where that's a huge W for the NHL right there.
Nice. Kind of sidetracking a little bit. You guys have a lot of younger players. You've been getting consistent prospects within the past couple of draft years. I will say I'm a Carter Yakimchuk fan, so very glad that you guys got him. Are there any guys that are coming up, be it prospects or maybe in Ottawa's like AHL that you're excited, hope to see kind of next year or in a couple of years?
100%. You mentioned Carter Yakupchuk, who, for those who don't know, he plays for the WHL's Calgary Hitmen here in Alberta. He's definitely the guy that fans are very excited about. I know that Levi Marilainen was certainly somebody on the come-up fans were excited about, especially when they saw how he played in the games he's played for the Sens so far. But honestly, like, there are definitely players that Sens social media will definitely cherry pick as being like their guy that wanted to come up. One guy in particular, and I'll flip the question here. One guy in particular who I think a lot of fans are already giving up on is Tyler Boucher, who we take in 10th overall 2021.
Why?
Injuries. Even when he got drafted, it was very much a pick of why exactly are we picking him? Again, this is when the Senators had Pierre McGuire working for them too. So when the more you think about that, the more you're like, okay, yeah, that's more a Pierre McGuire move. But Tyler Boucher is somebody who I think the Senators, I really believe that they think that this guy was going to be better than maybe he is. And unfortunately, injuries is definitely slowing him down. But even in the games he has played, he hasn't impressed by anything that I've ever read on social media about it.
Gotcha. We all get those. We are approaching the trade deadline in less than a little over a week. Do you think Ottawa is going to be buying? Do you think Ottawa is going to be selling? Do you think they're going to kind of just stay quiet during the trade deadline, see what everybody else does?
Yeah, it's really tough to tell. I think with Steve Staios at the helm, given he hasn't made a move since the July moves he made with bringing in the Nick Jensens and some of the free agency pickups he's brought in, he hasn't made a move. So it's kind of hard to tell what he would do at the deadline. I do want to say the Sens are buyers because they are in the wild card spot right now. But the problem is you look at the roster and you look at our salary cap, and the more and more questions of you guys want to buy, what exactly could you give up? Because realistically, there's not a whole lot that the Sens can give up unless they want to take a piece from the core and trade it that way. Obviously, Josh Norris is the one guy who's being singled out, especially because of his $7 million cap hit. And the guy has, I think he's had 3 shoulder surgeries in the last 2 years or something. Like, it's been really bad. So I could see him potentially being moved, but it's hard to tell. Like, it is really hard to tell with Steve Staios.
Do you think that they may make more moves in the off season when guys' contracts are up, or is everybody kind of in the position where they're signed for the next couple of years?
Well, I will give Pierre Dorian this, and it's something that Tim and I, my co-hosts, have always talked about with Dorian. It's regardless of what you want to make of like the DeBrincat trade or the Chychrun trade, the one credit you can give him is the contracts he's given to the core, where you have Stützle getting paid 8.25, you have Shabbat making 8, Sanderson making 8, Brady's making 8. Like, across the board, all these guys are making 8, where they could have realistically went to the team and be like, no, I want 9.5, I want 10 million a season. I do see the Sens making more moves in the offseason because of some of the contracts we have off the books, but also the buyouts on guys like Dion Phaneuf and Bobby Ryan are coming off the books now. So there's going to be quite a bit of cap space that's going to open up.
What would you like to see that? Or is there like particular people that you have your eye on, or maybe like a position that you think is a little bit on the weaker end that you'd like to see them kind of go after?
Well, I mean, there is this Connor Bedard guy. No, I'm kidding. I had to get that in. I'm sorry. I had to do that. I think the one guy that a lot of people are wanting is Ryan Donato. And Ryan Donato, well, I can't say too much about it because, again, I haven't watched enough of Ryan Donato to really give an honest opinion on him, potentially come to the Senators. But again, if you go on there, I mean, you will find people on there that'll say, yeah, let's go after this guy, or this guy. And realistically, you have to look at none of those guys would come to Ottawa. Well, Bedard maybe, but that's not the point.
I think Bedard's wanting to go anywhere but Chicago right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully that'll change. Highly recommend Ryan Donato, though. Big fan of Ryan Donato.
Yeah.
Really hope that he doesn't leave, but if he has the chance to go get more money elsewhere, good for him. All right, and then let's see. Last and final question. What would you say is kind of the biggest piece that the Ottawa Senators are missing right now? Be it mentality, be it a position that's struggling? What is their biggest roadblock to even potentially make it to the top three in the division?
100% would be a top pairing right hand defenseman. That right there, that's the number one key right there. Because you can look through the roster, unless you want to add some more depth to the bottom six, that's realistically the only thing I could see doing there for the Sens. If you want to bring up, say, a third pairing defenseman or two, that would be fantastic. But I think a top wing right shot defenseman would have been perfect for the Sens.
Perfect. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for coming on. You want to take a minute and plug your guys' show?
Absolutely. So, for those who are curious about what Third Line Plug Sensecast is all about, you can find us on all sorts of streaming services from Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play. You can find us on social media at Third Line Plug. As well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Great White Gipster.
Perfect. Perfect. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on. And that'll be all, guys, this week. We'll talk at you guys next week.
Thank you.